All right, Canaries, welcome back to the dating series. I think we're on episode 5, and we kind of alluded to a discussion about fishing in certain rivers. But as I was going through some of the data for it, I thought, at what point did dating stop being fun? And maybe it's just, I'm in my 30s, so a lot of my friends are in that age bracket, but most of my friends I talk to are like, I'm very tired. Dating is exhausting or disappointing. Some people are tired of rejection, and some people are tired of just like falling in love with things that don't exist. So as I'm listening to everyone's negative feedback on dating as a whole, I'm like, isn't this supposed to be fun? I reflect on my own dating life, and I remember there's a specific image in my head when I think about dating being fun, and it's me with all of these papers sitting on my porch, spread across the ground. I'm crisscross applesauce. There's papers everywhere. I'm hunched over a couple notebook. I'm writing riddles, like aggressively writing riddles, Googling information and stuff, trying to put these pieces together that I'm making up as I go. And if someone walked past me in that moment, they would probably have assumed I was planning some kind of bank heist or like really detailed crime. And my phone keeps lighting up because there's this guy from Tinder who asked me out. And instead of saying yes like a normal person, I asked, do you like games? And he said yes. And I said, do you want to play one with me? And this man, with a level of willingness to participate in nonsense that I deeply respect, tells me yes. And I remember staring at my phone thinking, how interesting. You're willing to participate in play. So I asked, would you like to play one with me? And without realizing that I'm not talking about a sweet little game of cribbage, he goes, yes. And I said, okay, I'll send you clues throughout my night. And if you solve them, you get to meet me. And I'm smiling right now remembering this because I remember thinking, will this person have the same playful spirit that I do? Will he think this is ridiculous? Will he quit? Will he get annoyed? Because that curiosity was more interesting to me than the date itself. How do you navigate uncertainty? How do you navigate possibly feeling embarrassed? There's something fascinating about people being willing to lean into, a little ridiculousness. If a random man texted me, do you like games? My brain would immediately go to like warehouse, hostage situation, Saw. Absolutely not. I want to play a game. No, thank you. But this man was fully committed. And he did hesitate for a second though. He texted me, damn, I don't go out much. And I remember replying to him like, well, if we're supposed to meet, you'll find me, which, looking back now sounds less romantic and more like I accidentally became an old witch assigning side quests like travel east, solve my riddles, bring me a stone. And he hesitates, for a second there. And for good reason, because again, I sound less like a potential girlfriend, more like the leader of a mildly concerning cult. But what I did was I gave him a little nudge. Do you play chess? Almost like putting the king in check. Like he's got an option, but one wrong move and the whole game ends. So I said, hey, I asked you if you wanted to play a game with me, and you said yes. So no take backs. And at this point, this was either going to become a relationship or a Dateline episode. And then fast forward, my roommate, she walks outside, she looks at me, she looks at all the papers, and she looks at me again and goes, what the hell is going on out here? And I'm sitting there with clues spread across the porch like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's trying to solve a conspiracy. That's what I look like. I look her deadpan and I say, I'm making a scavenger hunt for a man from Tinder. And there's a long silence, and I expected her to be like, Brianna, have you lost your mind? But instead, this woman, I love her so much. She's one of the main canaries. This woman immediately goes, I'm in. That might have been the first sign that the women in my life enable me a little bit too much, but she was there for it. And what was supposed to be a weird little joke turned into a full operation on my porch because my roommate, instead of being like concerned, immediately got so invested in it. Like she was here for it. So now both of us are out on my porch for hours. We're building clues. We're writing riddles. We're Googling stuff. We're trying to figure out what would be funny, what would be challenging. This person's from out of town. What kind of stuff could they actually recognize? How much emotional cardio is too much to place on this person for a first date? And you know what? The funniest part of this whole thing, no, not the funniest part. One of the funny parts of this whole thing is we really did not think this man would finish this race or this scavenger hunt. We were very convinced that he'd get halfway through and just let us know respectfully, absolutely not. This is too much work for a cat on a first date. So we kind of built the ending around that. The final location was a girls' night because I thought best case, we get an amazing date out of it. Worst Worst case, I'm already out with my friends. I still get to drink margaritas. Everyone wins. It's a no loss situation. And that's a little underrated too. Building your life in ways where even if a date fails or something doesn't go as planned, you still have a good time. I was still going to have a good night, even if he didn't, have the effort that I was hoping for. This man did not know that I had no intention of making this scavenger hunt easy. He thought solve one riddle, find the girl. Simple. No. False. This man unknowingly entered a full fantasy campaign. The first clue, to give you an idea, said to find the princess, hop up to Barnes to the castle on the hill. And if you're local, you might know or be able to figure that clue out. I'm not going to tell you guys locations, just the clues for fun. I made the first clue easier on purpose, like a tiny confidence boost, a little dopamine hit that, oh, I got this. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh, sweet baby, this is only level 1 because solving the first clue wasn't the end. It was the beginning. This poor man gets there thinking, great, I did it. I solved the riddle, only for the bartender to hand him another clue. I recruited bartenders, multiple bartenders at each location. It was like some tiny downtown conspiracy network. So he walks in confused, holding folded papers, looking like what I would imagine is Nicolas Cage in National Treasure. And the bartender, who's fully committed to the bit, hands him another clue and a beer. You earned it, buddy. Have a beer while you figure out this next clue. The note said, okay, I'll admit I've been a little sneaky. I'm not actually here. Are you warmed up now? And the next clue, and this one might have been one of my favorites because the bar it was alluding to had a really specific name. So naturally, I used a Dwight Schrute quote. The clue said, I wish I could do his voice. The clue said, I'm ready to face any challenge that is foolish enough to face me. And when I wrote that, giggling because I thought, if he gets this one, he'll know exactly where to go. And he probably has the same sense of humor that I do. And maybe some of you listening know, if you're a local, you definitely know which bar this clue takes you to. He took all of it serious. There was no eye rolling, no, this is weird. This man accepted the mission in totality. And then for reasons still unclear to me, I added another requirement. I told him, you also have to bring me a rock, like a pocket-sized rock. And he responds, okay, I'll find one. I want to see you. And that text still makes me laugh because now this man is solving riddles, going to a bar, holding folded clues, and likely assessing landscaping material. And something I learned later, I learned that penguins give pebbles to like mate for life, which I did not know at the time. So I accidentally had this poor man participating in some sort of low budget penguin courtship ritual. At one point he texted me and said, you're going to have me out here looking for rocks like an idiot. And I just said, you only need one. And then to kind of give him a little assist, like Mario Kart has those zoomies. I told the bartender when he comes in, before he leaves, ask him if he has his rock. Because I told him if you show up and you don't have a rock, it doesn't count. This bartender was so invested. This stopped being like my scavenger hunt and became a whole community project. Some of the bar regulars were in on it. The bartenders were in on it. Like it was cool. And there was, like I said, 3 different locations. Oh, and another unnecessary plot twist because we're starting at the first bar and we're hopping through the night. So if he solved the clues too slowly, he could miss us entirely. Not miss one location, but miss all of us. So I texted him and said, we'll be moving locations. You might solve the clue and still miss us if you aren't fast enough. Text back, but I can't miss you. I'll be so bummed. And something softened a little bit in me because underneath all the jokes and the play, I realized, oh, you care about this. You're in it. I remember telling him, you sound like the kind of guy who gets what he wants. And he replies, I'll get you. And to girls, oh, my chest. That was kind of hot. Commitment to the bit, underrated. This man solves every clue, every step across 3 bars, 3 bartenders, hours of riddles. And finally he gets to the girls' night and there's a giant table full of women. And I'm there in my cow costume, which somehow still is not even the weirdest part of this whole story. And I remember looking up, part of me didn't believe he was going to finish it. Not because it wasn't possible, but because most of the men I've crossed paths with don't have that prey drive anymore. But the 2 things that hit me were 1, he was very attractive. And 2, his hands were visibly shaking. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, there you are. And like, he did it anyways. He was terrified and he did it anyways. That scavenger hunt told me way more about him than a dinner ever could. It told me that he was playful and he was curious, that he was persistent and open, and then human. And we ended up having an amazing first date. It was so much fun. We danced, we laughed, we went back to the Dwight bar where the bartenders smiled and watched us interact all night because they had watched this ridiculous thing unfold. right? They got to be part of it. And for a while, we actually ended up dating. I think I remember that date so clearly because it felt alive. And I was thinking about that while putting together this episode. The word that kept coming in my head was fun. Like, when did dating stop being fun? I think a lot of us became so focused on outcomes that we forgot to enjoy the path getting there. And I get it, especially if you want like a partnership, a marriage, kids, stability. You start looking at people through the lens of, could this be something? Will this work? Am I wasting time? And those aren't bad questions. Tunnel vision sneaks in. And we become so focused on the destination that we stop participating in the actual adventure. Sometimes I think about life like a video game. Like, I'm building a character. I'm unlocking these skills, accidentally collecting emotional damage along the way. Side quests, unexpected friendships, and weird plot twists. Like, do you remember those books when we were kids, the choose your own adventure books? I loved those. The fun part in those books wasn't knowing the ending. The fun was, what happens if I go this way? What happens if I meet this person? What if this turns into something unexpected? I don't want to become so obsessed with the outcome that I forget to participate in the story. Dating can become like that too, where every interaction starts feeling like an interview, checklist, an evaluation, instead of curiosity, play, discovery. So if we're sticking to that fishing analogy, catching a huge fish is exciting. Like, of course, but the act of fishing, we can enjoy that too. The road trip or the stupid conversations, the sunshine, the snacks, and that friend that overshares halfway through. If I go fishing with people that I care about, I'm still outside laughing, making some memories, and having a beer at the river. The river itself was still worth visiting. And if I catch a fish, that's amazing. We love that. But if I don't, I still had a great day. And I think dating gets a lot healthier when we start to remember that. Because not every person needs to become our spouse. Some just become stories or lessons or friendships or ridiculous experiences that you tell years later on a podcast. Modern dating misses something, and that's just the participation. It's like so many first dates now feel like two exhausted HR representatives trying to determine long-term compatibility over tacos. Everybody's just interviewing each other, but nobody's flirting. We're all trying to sound emotionally regulated, trying to say the right thing, trying to not waste time, especially in my 30s. Dates become, what's your attachment style? How healed are you? What's your relationship with your mother? Can you list your red flags? Can we just get chips and salsa? And I understand why people do this. Sometimes out of a knee-jerk habit, I do it too. I do it a lot, especially because I think brains are so cool. People are tired. People have been hurt and don't want to waste years. I get all of that. I'm rowing the same boat. But I also think that somewhere in protecting ourselves, a lot of us accidentally removed so much of the joy that comes with this. Because if we become too focused on, could this be my person? We stop asking, do I even enjoy being around this person? Confidence changes a lot when you remember that you are also choosing. You're not walking into rooms hoping to be selective. You're observing too. You get to ask, do I feel relaxed around this person? Am I curious or safe? Do I laugh more? Do I shrink? Do I leave feeling lighter or heavier? Because some people are really attractive until they start talking. And suddenly your whole nervous system just packs its suitcase and leaves. And another thing I was thinking about is sometimes we're fishing in rivers that we don't even like. I'm hesitant about alcoholics, but I was dating people from the bar. Come on, right? We keep showing up in environments that don't match the type of connection we want. And then we feel surprised by the result. Babe, if you're trying to find a deeply adventurous outdoor person, you probably need to leave your house. Different rivers hold different fish. I knew I've stretched this analogy across this entire episode, but stay with me. Maybe we don't actually hate dating. Maybe we hate the environments that we keep trying to force connection inside of. That's different, and humans bond through shared experiences way faster than interviews, which might be why things like the scavenger hunt work. And then there's something I was reading called rejection therapy. I've seen it a lot online and I'm just reading about it. And it's where people intentionally practice getting rejected. Not because rejection is fun, but because eventually your nervous system learns oh, this is interesting. I survived that. I think people need more playful versions of this because some of you see an attractive person in public and immediately become this deer in the headlight sensing danger. Eye contact happens and your entire skeleton stops functioning. Not even mine too. I also panic. Eye contact is And I'm not even making fun of it because I do it too. But I still at 34, still get nervous approaching strangers. I was reading, I wish I could remember to reference it, but it had said, if you knew that with 100 more rejections, you could be where you wanted, how fast would you try to get through those rejections? So every time I approach someone or like them or, hit on them or open a space for vulnerability and the response is closed or unkind or a rejection of some sort, I take a deep breath and I remind myself oh, thank you. Thank you, body. Thank you, mind, for having the courage to do that, because that gave me a lot of data really fast by just being myself. And Logan, my son, always says, risking it for the biscuit. So risk it for the biscuit. Just be okay with maybe an opportunity not going how you hope and taking it as just a redirection. Oh, this person didn't choose me. I love that. I didn't have to do anything different there. You just don't. I don't fit in your puzzle. Thank you so much for telling me that. And then you can move on to someone that might. If I'm spending all this effort and energy trying to catch a trout and I don't have a trout pole, I think we should really learn to appreciate rejection, not try to convince it otherwise. But before we accidentally overcorrect here, because I can hear some of you thinking, okay, Brianna, so now we're all just making scavenger hunts and collecting pebbles from strangers. That's not exactly what I mean, because when I say dating should feel lighter or more playful, I don't mean dating shouldn't be intentional. I still think having a set of standards is really important. And it's literally why I spent the first few episodes talking about self-worth and boundaries, friendships, and support systems. And I even went into the red and green flags, figuring out who you are and what direction you're walking, because those things, they become your map, and you're not going to get where you're going without a map to follow. You're just traveling aimless. I'm not going to go on a first date with someone who openly tells me, yeah, I'm only interested in casual hookups. And that's not because casual hookups make someone a good or bad person. It's because it doesn't align with the direction that I'm personally walking. In the same way, someone who wants casual hookups probably shouldn't try to date me, right? I'm on a different path. It means we're fishing in different rivers. We have different goals and different maps, different destinations. Realizing compatibility is not good person versus bad person. A lot of the time it's simply same direction or different direction. You can like someone, you can really like someone and still realize, hey, I don't think this is the right move romantically. That's okay. And it doesn't automatically mean some kind of failure. I think sometimes we put so much pressure on romance that it becomes everything. And we forget how meaningful connection outside of romance can be too. Because I've met some incredible people that started out as curiosity or some kind of attraction, like a maybe, and eventually became friendships, really good ones. Not because something went wrong, the connection just changed its shape. And some of those friendships became more valuable than any romance would have ever been. Not every meaningful connection becomes marriage. Sometimes it becomes community, perspective, as we know, lessons, just a chapter and a really funny story. And intentional dating might simply be knowing the direction you're walking while still letting yourself enjoy the people you meet along the way. That's it. I can date intentionally and laugh and flirt and apparently convince men to solve riddles across downtown. Those things can all exist together. Sometimes the answer is no, but I'm still really glad I met you. That's another thing that I think has happened in modern dating is people have become so terrified to engage. Everyone's waiting for certainty before interacting. And humans don't really work like that. I think that confidence gets misunderstood here. Everyone talks about confidence as if it means certainty. Like you're certain someone will like you, certain everything will go a certain way, certain that you won't embarrass yourself. But I don't think that's confidence. I think confidence is being okay if it doesn't. Confidence isn't, I know I'll catch the fish. Confidence is, I'm going to enjoy the river even if I don't. And thinking that way puts dating in a better perspective, because awkwardness stops becoming a failure and rejection stops becoming proof that something's wrong with you, and it just becomes human. So confidence is less of the certainty and more about trust. Trusting I'll survive embarrassment, I'll survive a no, I'll survive somebody not choosing me. And because I trust that I'll survive it, I become way more willing to participate. And how fun is that? So then confidence stops looking polished and looks like a shaky voice and sweaty hands and trying it anyways, saying yes to the scavenger hunt. I still get nervous approaching strangers, deeply nervous, and I'm trying to practice doing it more. I overthink and I wonder if I'm bothering people, all of it. But most interactions do go much much better than my anxiety predicts. Even with zero romance, people usually appreciate with warmth and humor someone being human for 5 seconds and vulnerable. And I had this weird moment once that reminded me of that. So one of my friends, who's actually part of this whole HerCanary build, and her and I, we wanted to go dancing one night. And it was supposed to be themed like mustache night at the bar, which already sounds fake. But through a series of unfortunate events, we couldn't get into the original place. Like there was like a forgotten ID situation and crazy ex or something. I don't know. And I was so disappointed because mentally I had committed to the bit. Like I was emotionally invested and excited about these silly mustaches. And I remember looking at her and saying, no, I'm going to still wear mine at this other bar. No one else was going to be wearing. Like I want to still wear mine. Even if this isn't the thing at the bar, I have free will and this is how I want to use it. And we get to this bar and the doorman knows us. So when I walk in, I'm wearing a fake mustache and he looks at me like, what is happening? And my friend was not totally sold on the idea yet at first. Eventually, I did convince her, though. We had a whole fanny pack full of them. So now both of us are wearing mustaches, carrying around a fanny pack full of extra ones, which is not a statement I thought I would ever say in public. And then something weird happened. People started complimenting us and approaching us. And so every time someone laughed or complimented us or interacted in some way, we started handing them a mustache too. And slowly, the entire bar started participating. Like the bouncers, they were really good friends with us. He says, why does every woman in here suddenly have a mustache? And I swear it changed the energy of the entire room. Girls were laughing together, strangers were talking, tiny interactions were happening, and suddenly it stopped feeling like a room full of strangers and it felt connected. And it was through play. There was this one guy there, someone I thought he was really cute, that ended up talking to me because of the mustaches. And I remember handing him one, and it was extra funny because he already had a mustache. So it was like putting a fake mustache on his real one. And I remember he called me, I think he said something like it was an interesting creature or something, something really silly. And we laughed and we talked for a little bit. And eventually he did ask for my number. But the funny part was that I went into this night and I wasn't thinking about dating or being single or any of that. I was genuinely just having fun with my friends and the new friends I was making. And I think that's when something really clicked for me after that night, was that people gravitate towards people who seem alive, not like perfect or not the smoothest flirt, just like alive and curious, open and participating. I think that's why these silly little games work, like the riddles or the weird questions. I have these bracelets I used to do, or maybe a QR code on a hoodie. There's tiny moments because suddenly flirting becomes this interaction instead of performance. Like at one point I started making these Taylor Swift bracelets. If you're a Swiftie, I know you already know. There's entire groups dedicated to decoding these bracelets in their lyrics, right? So I started making them. And if I met a cute guy, I'd say, if you can figure out the lyric before I have to leave this bar, I'll give you my number and you can keep the bracelet. Some guys were like, no, thanks. Cool. You're not my type. And some of these men got invested, like Googling, asking friends, posting on Facebook forums, like racing the clock before we had to leave the bar, which did surprise me. But what I loved was even if nothing came of it romantically, the interaction was fun. It created curiosity and laughter and a reason for like communication and problem solving, effort, and then a silly story. Again, they were participating. And I think people are starving for that. Not just attraction, but play. Confidence is not becoming fearless. It's just being willing to engage and to participate and to risk looking like a fool and to risk being misunderstood. And in those risks, create moments. Because if we keep waiting for guaranteed certainty before interacting with people, you might accidentally spend your whole life just observing instead of participating. And that sounds way scarier to me than rejection, which is kind of funny to say now, knowing how I reacted to getting ghosted last episode, but that's all good. If there's anything I'm taking from this episode, or maybe reminding myself of, it's not go flirt with strangers. It's not every person you meet needs to become like your soulmate. I think maybe I just miss when people felt a little more willing to participate, a little more willing to be awkward or curious or playful. Sometimes I wonder how many people became so afraid of wasting time that they accidentally stopped living while trying to find love. When I think back on people who mattered, romantically or not, I rarely remember the polished moment. I remember over the weird things, like a scavenger hunt or someone's hand shaking, a fake mustache, or a Taylor Swift bracelet. Tiny moments where somebody lets themselves be human. So maybe connection isn't performing perfectly. It's just participating. It's just trusting that even if this goes nowhere, even if I embarrass myself, even if this person isn't my person, I'm still going to be okay. Sometimes the river itself was the story. And if you do catch a fish, I hope you made him at least solve one riddle or bring you a rock. Until next time, canaries, keep singing.